Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics on Monday, August 23rd, which I don't know if people are considering this an exciting day in silver history, although I am. Of course, one of the reasons I'm joined by my friend Alex Langer of Sierra Madre Gold and Silver, who's going to give us some insight, hopefully, and a report from the front line on the supply side. And Alex, great to have you here. And it's been nice getting to know you over the past couple months, and great to finally have you on the show. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm really well, Chris. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show. I love watching all the videos and updates. You've been a real big leader in the space, especially helping educate people on the importance of silver and what's happening and what's going to happen. It's been great, and thank you for all the work you do. It's awesome.
Well, that's certainly kind of you to say that. It's funny, especially as I'm seeing the calendar unfold here in 2021, really where you have a lot of events in 2011 that played out over that year when we had $50 silver.
Yeah.
And as we'll dig into today, I remember right around this time in August of 2011, you had the Tea Party, you had the debt ceiling, you had S&P downgrade them, you had, even though silver hit $50 in April, at the end of April, and came down, it got back up into the 40s. And we will cover all of that great stuff. Although first, Alex, this must be a good sign you're on the show. And we have silver even up 63 cents today. So
I saw that. It's quite exciting. It's about time, that's for sure.
So I would say so. I mean, especially because as I watch this coverage of whatever is going on in Afghanistan, almost there's something that seems reminiscent of what we were shown of the Iranian hostage crisis back in 1979, which I would put an ounce of silver on was actually a bigger impact than this narrative that the Hunt brothers were cornering the market. But I mean, we see wild things going on in the world today. And I guess, where do you think we stand with everything? What are you seeing? Anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, there's just so much happening right now, and bringing it back to Afghanistan, what's happened before. There's just so much uncertainty, and usually with uncertainty, you have kind of these little inflections in the price of silver and gold, where these things really start to rally, and it's just really coming, in my opinion, to a culmination point of so much money being printed and so much uncertainty, and people are going to start to go back. They really need to go back to kind of these hard assets in terms of silver and gold and things like that. And I think we're getting there, and all the fear we see on TV and still the COVID thing continuing, it's scary for people, and people are looking for fallbacks, and they're not going to just sit there and take it anymore. And one thing that's really changed, I would say, from now compared to 10 years ago when we saw the nice big run in silver, is people are more educated, and there's more blogs, there's more paper, there's more information out there that people can really sit down and look and learn to see, what's been happening, what is happening. And when that comes, there's just more eyes on it. People have access to the internet and TV and various sources. So when, this next silver rally really happens, it's not going to be $50. It's going to be substantially higher, and it's going to be truly exciting. We saw just a glimpse of it earlier this year with kind of the little silver rally just below $30 there. That wasn't very long ago, and that took nothing. That was 6 weeks, and jumped up $6-7. And when it happens next time, now that everyone's watching it and everyone's kind of waiting for it, it's going to be huge. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be this week, next week, or 6 months, or a year and a half. I don't really care, but it's going to happen, and it's going to be quite exciting when it does. Fortunately enough, back in 2010, 2011, was just finished being a broker, but we had taken a bunch of companies public, including Endeavor Silver and Fortuna, and just to see the amount of interest of these companies when silver started to creep up, it was absolutely incredible liquidity, and it was really a time for people to make generational wealth, which was pretty amazing. And that's why we do this. It's about wealth creation. We're not just maintaining; we want to create wealth, and that's why I love being on the miner side as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And given that, I mean, I get a lot of emails. I play around on Twitter probably far too much these days, but I noticed this theme even amongst some of the people that watch the show and are into silver. The volume on the manipulation is never going to end chant is blaring. I'm not trying to mock anyone. I've been there and done it myself. And based on what you just said, that what happened in 2011, what do you think would happen? Let's say we break the silver price breaks. I mean, the silver, 1 ounce of silver probably always costs 1 ounce of silver, but the fraudulent dollar, hyperinflated dollar price, let's say by some unusual set of circumstances, maybe the CFTC gets disbanded and doesn't have the ability to tamp down the price. What would happen if silver hits $75 or $100? Like, let's say we're a year from now. I mean, I know it's because of that recency bias. It's hard for people to even accept that, but mathematically, it seems, at least there's, let's say in some scenario that happens, what would the environment be like then?
It'd be interesting. So you'd see such an inflow of capital coming into this market, especially on the miner side, or people just trying to get on to any physical limitations of silver. There'd be literally runs, I would think, on people trying to get inventory. But you would see kind of this sector changes where people would have, and we saw it before, capital held in T-bills or whatever type of monetary instrument diving straight into silver and silver stocks and things like that. Anybody to really protect their wealth would have to move. You'd see trillions and trillions of dollars literally coming from, again, other sectors into silver.
Would you say perhaps somewhat similar maybe to what happened in early February when silver broke $30 for a matter of a few hours and people bought so much silver that even the LBMA wrote a report detailing how they were weeks away from running out. They used the phrase fears emerged. So I would imagine by the time we hit 75, you'd have something even bigger than that. In fact, would you say that, I'm not saying this is happening, not legal financial advice, but when we look at Bitcoin, here it is, under about $100 back in 2013, let alone what it was before that. Actually, let me phrase it like this. Let's say we have two buckets. Either A, it stays manipulated until the eternity of time, which to me seems harder to believe given the same people who rig financial markets are the same ones who launch these wars, and we see something happening.
Sure.
So we'll just call it scenario A, it gets rigged until eternity, and 100 years from now, silver is still trading at $25. But let's say in scenario B that whatever it takes, let's say I, just ponder around my silver cave and come up with some new plans to poke the silver cartel bear. Let's say I've already done that, and we'll leave that aside. What are the possibility, in case that rare situation that it ever does get overwhelmed, do you think silver, again, not legal financial advice, but is the profile at least set up that should that happen, is there something that better fits what could be the next Bitcoin?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair question. Absolutely. And, I think Bitcoin, it's shown people what can happen. Like this was, a small subsector of the investment community had some Bitcoin. That was it. But just take a look at some of these returns of, a digital currency, not something you can hold, not something you can touch. And it just goes to show, honestly, in my opinion, the potential, what could happen to silver. It's not unrealistic. It's, I guess, a truer store of wealth, absolutely, in my opinion. And, all the people that jumped on the Bitcoin wagon are starting to kind of understand the importance of other assets and silver being kind of the closest thing to it, in my opinion, let alone there's so much more uses for silver. So there could be a pretty exciting correlation. It just shows kind of the potential of what may happen. And it would be absolutely significant, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that. And Alex, you mentioned one of the reasons that some of these things are changing is that you have more access to information. I mean, I remember when I got into this 10 years ago and I was sitting on a trading floor and I'm thinking there's either something dirty going on here or I'm, imagining things, yet there was only King World News back then, where now we have a lot of YouTube channels that are able to cover things like the IMF bragging about dishing out 650 billions of SDRs today. I noticed that didn't seem to be covered on CNBC or some of the traditional muckraking rags, but I mean, is this getting a little insane somewhere? And what do you, are you getting your cut of the SDRs, or you're not in that
You
club?
know what? I haven't. Unfortunately, not. No, I have to work like most other people, which is disappointing. But maybe one day. But no, and man, it's frightening how much is being printed and how much is being given away for. I don't know. There's no reason. There's no rhyme or reason behind it, and it's not going to stop. And it's going to be up to. I don't know what that inflection point is, but when it turns, it'll turn hard. And as long as we're ready and we're positioned, I think we'll be okay. But you're absolutely right. There's no benefit to us that I've seen.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Now, Mrs. Georgieva is asserting that voluntarily channeling SDRs from wealthier to poor and more vulnerable. As a student of neurolinguistic programming, I have to point out more vulnerable member countries reminds me of the old Jim Rogers phrase of foreign aid is taking money from poor people in rich countries and giving it to rich people in poor countries, which certainly matches my experience. Although, speaking of that concept, as we touched on a little earlier before, and I thought would be fun to dig back into now, we have this debt ceiling where, the government's taking a lot of money, yet it doesn't seem like times are so ideal for the people of America. I mean, I'm watching videos up in Portland where it looks like World War III going on in the streets.
It's crazy. Like I'm in Vancouver, so one of my 5-6 hours away. We hear nothing about that. If it wasn't for friends having, relatives there, I wouldn't have heard of this. And it's just crazy, the amount of unrest. And all I hear is, Portland's one of the fastest growing cities in the US. Everyone's moving there for jobs and things like that because it's so great. But in actuality, things aren't positive, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty stunned. I was in Denver for a couple of years, and it happened right around the time COVID hit. All of a sudden, downtown was turned into a tent city. My experience in Austin was quite similar. So you wonder where that money is going. The Biden administration, I think they just set a record for food stamps that are going out, which is not perhaps the type of accomplishment I would aim for as president. But in either case, here you have Janet Yellen talking about this debt ceiling, which, again, it's interesting the way you put a comma here or there and how meaning of something can change, because let's dig in here. As I said in my letter to Congress on the 23rd, increasing or suspending the debt limit does not increase government spending, nor does it authorize spending for future budget proposals. It simply allows the Treasury to pay for previously enacted expenditures. So, Alex, it sounds like they're saying they already went over their credit card limit. So unless they raise this thing, it's already in default. And I guess if they were forced to face the accounting standards that they presented to Enron, who was business partners with the Bush, the gap accounting standards, I would, at least to common sense, it would seem as if it's already in default. Any thoughts on how, am I reading that right here, or what do you think?
No, that's absolutely correct. It's one of these things where I still don't get it. I don't see the justification of what they're doing and how they're doing it. And it's just wild to me, right? You try to, I would expect you'd run a country like you'd run a business, right? And this is not how you'd run a business. You'd be out of business in weeks, to be honest. You'd be done if it wasn't for, them being able to change the laws and the rules on a daily basis. That's the only reason it's still afloat here.
Yeah, well, fortunately, Alex, it seems like they resolved any mysteries in the next sentence with this demagoguing Hall of Fame beauty. Failure to meet those obligations would cause irreparable harm to the U.S. economy and the livelihoods of all Americans. Now, all Americans, I mean, there's got to be at least like one or two who
might be okay
by that happening, but they're saying it would cause U.S. economy, but I wonder, maybe spending the money without having it funded unless you can steal more, maybe that's what would cause the irreparable harm. What would you say?
I think that's a fair comment. It's much easier to steal from Americans and just backfill it as you need.
Yeah, well, here's the question I have though, because, again, I'm always trying to find out if they reset it, when would they do it, or what clues, which I guess is more of a hobby than anything, because in the end, I don't know, as you can actually show you what I have on my desk here. I don't know if people think I'm making it up, but here I am carrying around more silver. There's my 5-ounce cube.
I like that one.
I mean, and I think the nice part about silver, and maybe it was good for me to get away from a trading floor and get closer to a beach. It's going to happen when it happens. Now, to the degree it's like a movie and it's exciting, but I keep seeing a lot of dates, stuff along the lines of Basel III or new capital controls or transitioning over. I keep seeing things. I'm not saying what this implies. I'm just saying I see things where around that September 30th, October 1st, which I've learned October 1st is the start of the US fiscal calendar. So, and as I heard someone on the YouTube point out or phrase in a certain way the other day, I guess maybe that could be the deadline. Now, what if, so they've already spent more than they have, and the new fiscal year is coming, and it seems like if the debt ceiling isn't raised, then there's a big problem, which gets to the question, will the debt ceiling be raised? Now, everybody assumes automatically the answer is yes. Keep in mind, 10 years ago, it was such a problem they got downgraded, as you can see here. And I just wonder that in today's culture, where we won't get into whether anyone thinks the election was or was not rigged, but to the degree I'm reading stories, where do we have, I think I had it pulled up somewhere here, that, okay, here, Arizona 2020 election audit. I've heard even California, that they're even starting the process, that there's a discussion, and it's not just, the right wing, there's actual legislative action happening. Again, not to debate whether who won or didn't win the election, but the people fighting all of these battles have to agree on this debt ceiling. And has there ever been a time for these guys to just implode more than right now?
Oh, every day it's getting worse, right? And again, I don't know if it's going to be October 1st that this is going to happen, or it's going to be, 6 months, a year and a half down the road. But you're absolutely correct. It's getting to an inflection point here relatively quickly. And I wish I knew the date. I'd be back in the truck up, a couple of days before. So it's just still crazy to me to see what's happening. They're not stopping. It's just going to continue. And I really think it'll come to that inflection point when they won't be able to support it again. And it'll be kind of a groundswell, kind of what happened before. Retail investors and people like us, people that are now better educated, that'll be ready to jump on the dime when it needs to happen, and just bring this back to the forefront. And it won't just be, the smaller group, it'll be this much larger group of people. And again, educated investors that kind of come together, and then the funds will come in, and before you know it, we'll be pretty happy.
Yeah. I mean, what would you say if maybe the plan is that they're like, all right, you know what, we'll reset the darn thing, some really big number higher. We'll shut up the silver bugs. They'll be able to go buy an island somewhere. We could call it Arcadia. I mean, most of the world probably wouldn't notice, especially when you see how things, it's just a 3-card Monty. I mean, it's bankrupt. Companies go through bankruptcy all the time. Exactly. It's more the conditioning. Oh, the US government can't do it, but they've already done it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I completely agree. We see it happen. It's happened to cities. It's happened to, things, and life goes on. Like, it's not just the end of the world. Nothing's going to, change. It might be, a little bit difficult for, these cities and countries to kind of get over the next little while, but life has to continue. The human race is, pretty strong, to say the least, and very resilient, and things will just continue. And, those of us that have, prepared for it will be, better off, but everyone's gonna be fine. Everything's, people will eat, people will continue to live.
Yeah, it just might be that the price of electronics is going to have to be higher if we continue to use them due to the silver issues that you've put into context. Sure. Alex, I'm going to pull up the gold chart, because here is actually August of 2011. So the last time we had, and again, I don't know what this year's debt ceiling were. I think it could be close to that one, but to see, was there any impact? Gold started the month 1620. I think the 5th was when the US got downgraded. So basically a $300 rally, which I would assert would have gone higher, because that actually, you want to hear a good one? This dive bomb right here occurred, I believe, less than 2 hours after the Swiss announced that they were going to peg their franc to the euro, essentially devaluing the last alleged safe haven currency. I thought what gold was about to bust through 2000. Instead, it got hammered with paper in the middle of the night, which is what led me to start researching all this. So any thoughts on what happened the last time the debt ceiling, which is not to say that this time was guaranteed to be active, but any thoughts on that chart there?
Yeah, no, I actually remember that time as well. It was one of these things where, you had all the ducks in a row ready for, this rally that, wasn't going to stop unless some sort of, large economy in the world put a damper on it, which they did, which, it's manipulation, obviously, and you've done your research on that. But again, it just goes to show, the similar times, and history does repeat itself. It's happening in Afghanistan right now, where, it was the British first, then the Russians, and, now, the Americans and kind of NATO and the rest of the world, where, you see these things and it's going to happen again. And this is a perfect chart to the potential. And, I don't know if it'll be the Swiss this time or whoever else trying to put a damper on it, but, they can try. But you see it rallied again right after as well. So even if it's a little, bit of a hit, it continued there for a while.
Yes, I would agree. And actually, I was wrong on my chart. Here is the night it got pummeled down in the middle of the night, which, Alex, you mentioned patterns repeat. That was Labor Day weekend of 2011. See how that goes. Although, back to the supply side, and again, I might, you are the chief of Sierra Madre, and I'd love to run a question by you that I got yesterday in one of our chats. Someone was saying that, let's say the price of silver shoots up to $50, $100 or something. Is that going to bring a lot of silver supply online? I would say yes, it'll bring silver supply online, but you might be waiting a couple of years to get it. And when you think about, or actually you tell me, let's say we did get silver even up to $100 relative to how much silver, okay, we have about 1 billion ounce supply now. How much more would that be? A substantial amount, and how long would it take?
No, it would take a long time, first off. So great, you have ounces in the ground. There's a value you can associate with that, but actually getting that metal out of the ground in terms of just permitting or increasing production is not easy. Like getting ounces and actually mining silver is not an easy endeavor, to be honest. So obviously there'd be a lot more investment. So people would be able to throw more money at this, but you're still beholden to communities and the workforce and actually building materials and things like that to increase production or to start production from scratch in certain circumstances. So you'd see a lag there of probably 18 to 24 months before silver would even start to kind of eat away at that demand. There are probably a few projects out there that you could turn on a little bit quicker, maybe 6 to 9 months, but it would be slow. We've seen it with other sectors as well. I remember, with lithium, there was a kind of the boom 4 or 5 years ago, and everyone's saying, these green electric cars are going to take over, and they would have, but there's just no lithium out there. So it was really a slow, steady kind of push, and they're still, really far behind. And same thing would happen with silver. You'd love to see it kind of turned on the next day, but it doesn't happen like that. It takes a while to, at least, apply for your permits. You need, years of environmental studies, and you need the right people to pull it out at the same time.
Yes, that is the case. And Alex, you mentioned how in your background you had brokerage experience. Now you're running Sierra Madre, so you speak to a lot of investors. And by the way, that's a beautiful photo there. Nice green pyramid in there.
Yeah, no, that's actually the project. It's quite neat.
Looks similar to where it was staying last week.
Yeah.
But anyway, with the investors you're talking to, aside from what you're seeing, what do you pick up of the tone and you can break it down into buckets if you like, the diehards, the people new, is new money coming in? What are you sensing right now?
That's a good question. So getting a lot of people that are starting to do research again, as I mentioned. So this ability for the individual investor to do their own research and educate themselves and, phone me out of the blue or other CEOs of other mining companies just to educate themselves to make a proper decision on where they want to invest. So you have, the funds that, kind of come in during the financing and things like that. And they have a set amount of capital that they can invest, and they invest in, certain deals that they like. But it's the individual retail guy that are really starting to come in and to take notice and are able to kind of pick where they want to invest. I know when I started Sierra Madre Gold and Silver 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, there really wasn't much you can invest in. If you wanted some early stage, it could be kind of really high risk, high reward, something that would, get a project, push it forward, push that all the way into production, where you get those amazing returns, really big delta. There really wasn't much out there. So that's why we started the company. So we're seeing, I guess, investors that are interested in that and wanting to see something, eventually produce silver and produce metal and be able to kind of, take advantage of what's coming in the silver price. Those are the types of people that we've been attracting, at least in the company, as we've had a number of successes. Our executive chairman, Greg Liller, I think he's had 7 projects actually become mines, which is unheard of. You see guys do it once or twice, but to do it, 7 times is incredible. But one thing that was always very consistent is every one of these large M&As he's had some for $750 million US and things like that, is any of the projects were purchased by other companies once they were in production. So it's also really important to have the metal, but also be able to take it out of the ground. And that's, kind of the basis of what we're doing is we want production. We're looking for production and we're pushing towards that.
Yeah. And Alex, perhaps that would be a good time if you could touch a little bit more on what specifically you guys are doing. One thing I find is helpful, if we consider 0, you're at the beach with your metal detector, and 10, you're in production, putting on that scale so people can understand the profile. And then maybe you could tell us any of the other important highlights.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, we're looking for production. We're in an area of Mexico called Nayarit. It's in Western Mexico. There is a good amount of production there. It's smaller.
Whoa, Alex.
Yeah.
I'm in Nayarit, right?
I do.
The peak here is not too far north of me. So if you need someone to go guard the silver, I could help.
Absolutely. It's still on the ground, which is good. So I don't think anybody's moving mountains at this point, but eventually one day. And if you want to come by and check it out anytime, absolutely thrilled to have you. So Tepic is where we're focused. Again, not far from you. It's about an hour and a half from Puerto Vallarta. So the infrastructure is amazing. What attracted us to the area is there is production, as I mentioned. There's precious metals facilities. There's a lot of kind of independent private mines, but no one's consolidated the area. So that's really the potential that we have, is to acquire a number of projects. We hope to have kind of 50 to 100 million ounces of silver in the next 3 to 5 years, as well as production from 2 or 3 points. We're going to be utilizing kind of like a centralized facility, similar to a hub and spoke mining scenario, something that's modular so that we can, increase production, start with a lower capex, but, add on as various projects come into play. The first project we acquired is Tepic, was the one we just saw. Well, what I really liked about Tepic are a few things. One in particular is during it, silver's peak in 2011, actually had a market cap of over 150 million, but more importantly, to spend about 20 million US in the ground. So we have all that information. They put together a historic resource with over 10 million ounces of silver equivalent. They did a bunch of metallurgical work. They did a number of other resources as well. One was, over 18 million ounces, just depending on which cutoff grade you wanted to use. So for us, it's an amazing start. It's really a project that we're very high on. We feel it's going to be, a good base for that production scenario, and a lot should hopefully come from Tepic. We've been working at it pretty aggressively here. We just finished a 20-hole drill campaign just to kind of re-up that historic resource. And we're going to be diving into a much larger drill campaign, hopefully up to close to 200 holes from when the rainy season stops, kind of end of September, all the way through to the end of the year, then coming out with an updated resource report, and then getting right into engineering work. So we want to do PEA, and on the back of the PEA, we'll start to look at production if all the numbers and everything work out well. Also at the same time, we are very active in acquiring other projects. We picked up a project about a month and a half ago called La Tigre. It's about 140 kilometers from Tepic. So it fits in really well, that kind of hub and spoke scenario where we could have production from various sources in a centralized area. So we're not beholden to kind of land issues or, building on the side of a mountain. We can find a nice, centralized area. La Tigre has actually been in production kind of off and on since the 1900s. It is pretty spectacular. It's very small scale production right now, kind of some small Gamsino families that are mining there, and we'll be working with them already, which is great. It's never seen a drill hole. This thing is pretty spectacular. I know our geologists are really quite excited about it. It's been housed in a major for the last 27 years, so it hasn't really seen the light of day. So we've started topography work. We just sent in a few hundred samples, and we're going to be hopefully drilling that really, really shortly here as well, kind of in October. It'll be the first time this project, which has historic numbers of 10 grams gold and over 300 grams silver production numbers, which is really quite high, which is great. So we'll be drilling that here before the end of the year as well. So we have two really exciting projects with a bunch of news flow that's hopefully not going to stop.
Yeah, well, especially I love your timeline there in October. Again, we'll see what happens with the silver price. And Alex, since I believe you are going to be able to make it down here for Silverfest, and we can talk about that more another time, but perhaps maybe if people are sticking around a day or two later, it might even be possible for them to come see the site.
Oh, 100%. We would love that. It's super easy to get to, depending on traffic. You can do it in about 45 minits, but we'll budget maybe an hour and a half.
About Mexican time, as I've learned, which is probably a really good thing for a former East Coaster who's learning to mellow out and relax. But yeah, I'd love to see it. And I know Jorge from Marina is doing a mine tour, and
absolutely. Yeah. So Jorge's on our board as well. And I'm on the board of Reina. So Jorge and I work together quite closely. He's obviously from Mexico City, and he's been on your show a few times. So absolutely. So it'll be kind of two opportunities for people if they're interested. We'd love to have everyone. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, I'll sure be looking forward to it. And I mean, that's really the point of the whole Silverfest thing, to get people together just so they can meet each other. It's not going to be as much conference room, more let's talk about bond yields or silver if we have to do it in the pool. Well, there's free silver coins flying everywhere. So we'll be looking forward to seeing you there. Will you be here before then? Or when are you going to be coming down?
Yeah, I'll come before. I'm actually headed to Mexico City in a week and a half, meeting with a couple of these groups. We are looking at other projects, so do pay attention to that. And then I'll be down in Tepic kind of the last week of October and into November, and then our chairman Greg Lillard's heading down in I think about 10 days as well. So I'll make sure he drops by to say hello.
Cool. I'll be looking forward to that. And Alex, perhaps last thing before we wrap up, anything else you feel people should know about Sierra Madre Silver, and also how they can, if they want to get more information, the details, what's the best way to contact you guys? Yeah,
absolutely. So easiest way is probably through our website. You just Google Sierra Madre Gold and Silver, will come up. Easy enough. And then if you go to contact, an investor goes to me, and that's actually my cell phone number. So if anybody does want to give me a call anytime, I'm happy to chat. I'm around. I guess the last few things is we have over 12 million in cash right now in the bank. So we are well capitalized. We have some strong institutional support. So people that do follow us, and if and when we do need more capital, it's usually a good sign. It means things are progressing and you're moving on to the next stage. We have those people behind us. I'm the largest shareholder. I think invested close to $800,000 personally into this with my family. Management and founders, we own still 40% of the company. So it gives you an idea of how much at stake we've put in and how much we believe in what we're doing. And if people have any questions or would like to join us on this journey, that'd be great. If not, yeah, happy to chat silver absolutely anytime.
Well, I sure appreciate that, Alex. Again, I've mentioned this many times. That's really has become one of my favorite parts of silver, where it's like, all right, we see the president, Fed, you can never get an answer yet. People don't have to guess, and don't get your questions answered. Have your financial advisor, whoever, call and decide if it's a right fit for you. But appreciate you being available, and I will look forward to seeing you down here in Mexico soon. And thanks for being on the show today.
Awesome. It was a pleasure. It was a lot of fun, Chris. I really appreciate it.
All right, and we are clear, sir.
Awesome.